Hey guys, Andrew McComb here and welcome to Outlier. In this week's episode, I'm in beautiful Bali, Indonesia, where I'm going to be speaking to Gary Bencheghib. He's the founder of Make a Change World. Okay guys, Gary has been making waves in the environmental activism world. Let's go and meet him. Gary, welcome to Outlier. What a fantastic location.
Thank you.
Where are we?
So we're in Bali, here on the beach. This is actually the beach that I grew up for the past 16 years. So it's quite a symbolic beach. And it's also the beach where we've installed our first trash barrier. So we're protecting this part of the coastline. So quite symbolic.
So you're making a change to the world, and that looks like cleaning up rivers that then clean up the ocean. So just talk us through how that began.
Right. So actually 10 years ago, growing up on the island of Bali, when you would go running on the beach, surfing or swimming in the ocean, plastic was everywhere. It was in our rice fields, it was on our beach, it was in our rivers, and you really couldn't look away from it, to the point where it would distort your natural everyday life. So 10 years ago with my brother Sam, we were like, what can we do as the youth of Bali to make a change? And really starting, the one thing that we could do is literally go every weekend on a Saturday or Sunday and pick up and clean up the trash that we see on the beaches. And so that, started into, we invited friends from schools, made it a school group with students. We were called Make a Change Bali at the time. And every week we'd pick a different beach around the island to clean up. But very quickly realized that, the cleanups that we would do, that very next weekend or that very next day, more plastics would come. So we were just sort of sweeping the floor in good faith, but not really making that change. Although from a visual standpoint, we felt like we were victorious that very day. It was coming back. So that's when we started to think, what if we actually focus on the problem at the source, on land, before it even gets out into the ocean.
So what did you do?
So, upon researching, obviously, this is 14, 15, 16-year-old me wanting to understand more about the plastic pollution problem, realizing that there's no barriers between the rivers and the ocean, and that 90% of plastics in the ocean come from rivers in the first place. So that was a really, I think, a big trigger point for us.
Just say that stat again for me. 90% of the plastics that go into the ocean come from rivers.
90% of plastics in the ocean are coming from land-based sources, so rivers and streams.
Wow, unbelievable.
Yeah, it's quite a, well, if you think about it as well, most of our consumption is on land. You think about ferries going out to sea, and sometimes, yes, you could think that ferries, people throw out their trash, but the truth is the majority of the plastic we consume today is coming from land.
So to go to the source, it's such a massive challenge, right? But to go to the source, what did you then start to do?
So my brother and I were always really big fans, of adventure. We had actually initially started, our first fundraiser was climbing Bali's biggest volcano, Gunung Agung. And since then, it was always that adventure-driven thrill to wanting to do more. And so we really combined our passion for activism and adventure in our first expedition, going down the Mississippi River, America's most important and iconic waterway, where with 5 friends on the summer of 2016, on one of my summer holidays, we decided, what could we do to visually represent how much plastic America consumes? So we set out to build a junk raft made from 800 plastic bottles. All the wood on the deck was made from reclaimed materials, and even the sail was made from old tents stitched together. We even had a solar panel on board to charge our gear, like cameras and drone. But really that idea was inspired by Mark Twain's Huckleberry Finn. Yeah. But more so just the idea of going on this epic adventure to discover what this entire massive problem is about. But so at this point in time, how old were you? I was, I think 21.
And Sam?
Sam didn't join that very
He
trip.
wasn't on that one?
It was just me and friends.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was super jealous not to join it.
So how did it go? Like, obviously you paddled down the river and...
Yeah, so it was a 2-month expedition going down from Minneapolis all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. And all along the trip, we were like a recycled expose of people stopping harbor to harbor. We had a live tracker on our boat, and people, really wanted to see the recycled boat. We became the gossip of that entire summer. But beyond that, I think just that idea of being on a big waterway, seeing industrial life, seeing the history behind, transporting goods in a waterway, but more so how urbanization has happened. On the Mississippi, you have a part of the river just north of Louisiana, south of Baton Rouge, called Cancer Alley, which is the petrochemical industry, factories after factories after factories. And the people living around Cancer Alley are much more prone to cancer. The cancer rate is the most elevated in the US. And I think seeing that firsthand, where you see these huge, big factories with dark smoke coming out, that's when you realize that what we're doing to our planet right now we're not going in the right direction. And in fact, the US has just claimed that they were wanting to build more petrochemical factories over there.
Seriously?
So
how do you feel when you see that crap being pumped into the rivers, which is going to go out into the ocean, which is going to affect wildlife, it's going to affect people? How does it feel when you're paddling down that river?
I mean, definitely, I think on the Mississippi more so, we didn't really visually see the impacts like that, because it's the big muddy, the brown water. You can't really tell. We didn't see pollution in that sense, but
could you feel it or sense it though?
So we did some of the first microplastic tests with one of the university out in Louisiana.
Yeah.
To really test how much microplastics were flowing down the Mississippi in the upper and in the lower, and we're very, very shocked that upon our research, trillions of microplastic particles are going outwards into the Gulf of Mexico. The Mississippi dredges 41% of U.S. waters. So the Illinois, the Missouri, Ohio River, major rivers are going into the Mississippi. And if we have trillions, what does that mean? A microplastic particle is smaller to see than the naked eye. So that's like the unseen danger that we can't even think, because it's too small to see. And so I think that was very, very, very terrifying for us to experience. And that's really what inspired the next adventure that next summer.
Yeah, so just on that, there's two forms of plastic, essentially. There's the bigger plastic, like the bottles and that type of thing, but then there's the microplastic that we don't even see, that we're not even aware of, that's being pumped down.
Right, so it's plastics either that degrade over the years and leaches into these small little microplasticles because of photosynthesis, the sun, or break down with salt water. But then so that's really the scary part. We potentially all of us have microplastic particles inside our stomachs, but we don't yet know the impact on our health. There's just initial research that are being tested right now that microplastic particles would cause endocrine disruptors in our brains, meaning more likely to get cancer. And that research is just coming out right now. So this year, actually, a lot of the research labs are coming out with research in the fall. So
be fascinating to see the impact.
Fascinating, but very, very, very scary. I think it's going to shift the entire, human population and their attitude towards plastics. Because if we know that it has a bad impact on our life, I think we would switch.
Well, I guess the hardest thing for people is they can't see it, right? So you can see, like we're here on the beach here in Bali, and you can see the rubbish. It's visible, but microplastics aren't visible, are they? They're invisible,
right?
And yet they're going to have a profound impact on us.
No, completely. And I think that's the scariest part of this very problem.
Yeah. And so Mississippi becomes next project?
Yeah, so obviously, when you do an adventure, you're on a boat for 2 months, all you think about in your head is what is going to be the next adventure. And so not having gotten the visuals that we anticipated, we literally Googled most polluted river in the world. And then, we're very shocked to see that it was located in Indonesia, on the island next to Bali. So Java, the island next to where we grew up. And I think that automatically put a switch in my mind, and I was like, We got to do that river no matter how toxic it is, no matter how polluted it is. So it's called the Cheetah River. It's the most polluted river in the world, according to various sources, including Switzerland, and others, but basically goes for about 300 kilometers just south of Jakarta, Indonesia's capital. 27 million people live on this river, and it's, the textile hub of Southeast Asia, where you have your Gap, H&M, all sorts of textile industry directly dumping their toxic waste into the river. And so I think we didn't really know what we're getting ourselves into. The idea was going to be very similar to the Mississippi in that we were going to be floating on plastic bottles, and we somehow had to find a different raft idea. So we came up with this idea of making 2 plastic bottle kayaks, each made of 300 plastic bottles, a bamboo frame, and a recycled net. So it was fully recycled. Tested it out to, making it. We had never made a boat before, and we failed our first time. Then called up upon some friends who were bamboo experts who really helped us. And then I think in August 2017, we were ready to launch this 2-week expedition, starting very much at the source of where this textile industry begins. And it's, probably some of the most terrifying experiences I've ever experienced, just from the smell of rotten eggs, just dead flesh. You see these fires burning every 300 meters, and then you get dip of plastic waste, just like dumping, like these mini landfills that are being dumped.
Just straight into the river.
Straight into the river. So in terms of visuals, we were very, very overwhelmed by the reality of the problem, because it's like you're stepping into, like this faraway place that's unreal. You think about movies in 50 years' time, and that's what ultimately they're trying to portray. But this is happening right now in our home country of Indonesia. And so, obviously very, very moved by it. So we produced a video series on social media, really to document our trip, but also, realizing that there was people fighting the good fight. Although the conditions are so shocking and completely out of this world, there's people that still find positive energy to battle the fight. And I think that's what really inspired all along, whether it's the Mississippi or the Cheetah Room. Being a filmmaker as well, we really try to capture those stories. And that's really, what keeps you going, to really see that this is not the end, but there's communities that want to see a cleaner river.
So tell me, this river, where does it flow to?
So it flows out into the Java Sea. Yeah. But 90% of Jakarta's water comes from that very river. So if you think about that for a second.
Disgusting.
Jakarta, a major city, one of the biggest and most populated cities in the world. And whenever you turn your tap on in Jakarta, or whenever you flush your toilet, it's that very river that's filtered, but still it's coming from that river.
So do the people know that?
People have no idea. It's like the elephant of Indonesia in the room. The elephant in the room of Indonesia. And I think, obviously, they knew that it was that polluted. There was reports before on the river. But through our social media campaign, it got viral overnight and got the attention of most of Indonesian national media, who then got the attention of the Ministry of the Environment just 2 weeks after we had finished, where he declared on camera, after watching your video, we are setting up this emergency cleanup. And I think he spoke a little bit too early, and that he didn't get the approval of his president or anything. So then that created some sort of, big mess. Again, more virality to the cause, which is great. Yeah. And 4 months later, the Indonesian president launches the big cleanup of the Cheetah Room, one of Indonesia's biggest cleanup in its history, to deploy 7,000 military troops to clean up the river. So they've been going on it for 2 years and a bit now. But yeah, military troops are every day living with communities, teaching them about better waste management, but trying to do everything to dredge this toxic goo and plastic pollution to try to get it out of the river.
Yeah. And how's the response been from the people, knowing that this new initiative's been created?
No, I think it's been truly amazing to see, how people have reacted. Indonesia has they're very proud of their army and military. So to have them directly involved in the river, I think has opened up so many eyes to see that it's gotten that attention, and also for the president himself to, to come and to dedicate part of his annual budget into the cleaning up of this river is great. So I got to meet the president at the launching ceremony, which was amazing. But he told me very, very succinctly that in 7 years, the Cheetah River is going to be one of the cleanest rivers in the world. And so over the last 2 years, we've seen amazing efforts, people coming together to make it a national agenda. But with lack of funding and lack of motivation when you're dealing with such a big problem, I've been going back and forth to try to see how we can energize the troops. And whenever they get a film crew actually over there, they're all excited.
They get excited, yeah.
So we have to think about how we can make sure that they don't lose hope and that they keep the energy alive.
Well, they probably feel devalued because every day you've got to do it over and over again, right?
Just like our beach cleanups here in Bali.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily dealing with it at the root of the problem. They're just starting right now after 2 years. The first 2 years, they were really dredging the impossible, but now they really have to start thinking about how to do it at the source. And so that's really what inspired me, like we've done awareness campaigns year after year, we've done cleanups, but what can we provide as Make a Change World in terms of real solutions? So our next project, Sungai Watch, which I'm wearing the t-shirt, it's in the back.
Sungai Watch.
Protecting Bali's waterways.
Yeah.
That you got out to see yesterday, is all about how can we prevent that very plastic pollution from going out into our ocean by deploying these trash barriers that are low cost, so cost efficient, very localized materials that can be replicated on a mass scale, and it's all about scalability, meaning that anybody can build a trash boom or a trash block tomorrow.
So tell us more about that. These booms and these blocks, they stop the flow of the water or the plastic, and then you go in and clean it up, or you tell me how that works.
Exactly. So a trash block, as its name says it blocks the trash, meaning that it acts as a gate or as a physical barrier to stop the plastic in the rivers when you can still pick it up before it goes out into the ocean. When it goes out into the ocean, plastic from Bali could end up on the beach in Santa Monica, or a plastic bottle that's thrown in the sea in Sydney can end up here on Bali. So there's no barriers in the ocean, and I think that's the scariest part of this big problem, is that with currents, you get these little gyres or these big gyres, and it becomes, with currents, you lose where plastics go. So I think going back to the solution, we really wanted to make sure that we could capture as much as possible when we still can.
Before it heads out into the ocean.
And so what we're doing is essentially disaster relief effort, a little bit like what they're doing on the Cheetah River. But if everybody, could make their own trash boom, if everybody could adopt these technologies all around the world, I think we'd be able to significantly reduce the amount of plastic that's going out into the ocean. So
as you say, though, one's disaster relief, but obviously at the higher end, at the source end, you want to look at the cause of the problem, right? Which effectively is production of plastic and consumption of plastic, and then discardation of the plastic and or non-refundable plastic. How do you, looking at Cheetah River as an example, what are the companies doing now to make a difference in that space, or what are governments doing to try and change that?
I think the biggest problem overall in Indonesia is that up until a couple months ago, we're only using 1% of the overall budget dedicated to waste management. And so infrastructure is really not living up to the production and the consumption here in Indonesia of plastics. And so if you can't deal with it at end of use, obviously it's going to unmanaged landfills, ending up in our rivers or in our ocean, or being illegally burnt. And I think that...
Which is toxic in its own right, isn't it? Burning of the plastic.
So I think that there's a lot to do in investing in waste management, investing in infrastructure, to make sure that, it's not ending up in our atmosphere, in our oceans. So that's really the big problem. And I think on the Cheetah River still, we're not having the proper resources put for proper waste management. I think if we are to change Indonesia, and I think right now it's quite difficult because they've been living on, the informal sector for a while. You have, Indonesia has one of the biggest population of scavengers, where the middleman pays, multiple families to get him back his commission. And so you can't really interrupt that sector because it's very, very low poverty.
So tell me about that. There's people out there scavenging the plastic to take it back and getting a small commission for X amount of weight or quantity of plastic. Is that right?
So because we don't have proper waste management, we have some of the biggest open landfills in the world after Brazil and other countries. But so that means that in these huge, massive landfills, you have scavengers that are living literally on trash by selling the trash, by scavenging the best pieces, the most valuable pieces from aluminum to plastic bottles. And so it's typically the structure of how it works is that you have a middleman that has, a couple families working for him, where even some of the kids are working as well. And so how can you try to make it a dent in this big structural...
Well, you're against so many facets, aren't you? Not only the pollution itself, but there's the government, there's the lack of education, and then you've got politics with people who are already getting a little cut along the way, which is pretty standard in these things, isn't it?
Yeah, no, definitely. So it's definitely a long fight, and I know that we're not here for a couple of years. I think it's definitely a life dedication. Growing up on the island of Bali, wanting to protect a very island, an island surrounded by the oceans. When you are raised on an island, I think you see it way more when you get to go to the beach every day and see the first impacts. And I think that's why as well, what makes Bali a melting pot of eco-champions. We have other amazing initiatives on this island. But
well, your girlfriend is also dedicated to cleaning up or banning plastic bags, isn't she?
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's all about who you surround yourselves with. My girlfriend's been in the fight for 6 years. My brother just recently ran across the US for plastic pollution, running with shoes made from 11 plastic bottles, meeting with state government, governors, mayors and schools to raise awareness about the issue. So I think you have to keep yourself motivated, because dealing with it every day with your bare hands is not optimally the most inspiring thing to do. But I think when you, like yesterday, I think when you do get to remove 50 kilos in a couple minutes, 30 minutes or whatnot, with your own hands, you feel the true impact, and you know that you're making a better change. So, yeah.
So talking about life dedication, we spent a day out there yesterday, as you just mentioned, cleaning up, half an hour to clean up 50 kilos. You've got your block in the water, it's coming down, it's blocking it up, you're lifting it, we're putting it in the bags. It's a thankless task, mate. You do it every day. You're not just talking about this, it's not just about raising awareness, you're actually going out every day and doing it. What motivates you to do that? Because, mate, I was there in the smell, the dead animals, the disgusting diapers, the plastic, it's feral, right? It's wet, it's not a pretty environment. What drives someone like yourself at a young age to dedicate their life to that?
I think, when you see the conditions of the Cheetah River, the most polluted river, and you realize how far we've come in the destruction of our planet, by 2050 there's going to be more plastics than fish. I think that's something, it's like a little mantra in my head that we have a deadline. And if we pass the point of no return, we're basically doomed as a society. So we have to do everything in our hands right now as quickly as possible on an everyday basis. And I think if we can all focus on the small tasks as well. The truth is, as you saw yesterday, one person removing 50 kilos from one little gut or one little stream. What can everybody do on a massive level, whether it's decreasing the amount of plastic bottles they use on an everyday basis or their plastic consumption overall? I think that if we do win this plastic battle in terms of the bigger climate change picture, which we can, I think, we're strong enough, we're seeing amazing announcements, amazing revolutionary new ideas around the world to really push us towards the boundaries of eliminating the plastics overall, single-use plastics. And that will, make us feel like we can fight this fight.
Yeah. So I want to keep going back to this drive thing, right? You've been inspired. There are a lot of people out there who would think it's a great cause, and it is a fantastic cause, but they don't do anything about it. What's the difference between you and someone else? So to me, that's what Outlier is all about, right? Is what's the difference between you and those people who don't take the action? They'll talk about it, but they won't take the action.
I think, like Bali has such a strong place in my heart. It's really, the place where I grew up, and seeing it getting destroyed over the years, it's, for the sake of this island, for the sake of this planet, for the sake of our ocean, I truly don't want it to go, for us to miss that opportunity of not protecting it. I think right now we have everything in our hands to make sure that we sustain as a society. And we owe it to our planet to really make that leap forward and try to protect it. So whether we're going down some of the most polluted rivers in the world to make that statement to governments that we need urgent action, or whether we're running physically against continents, I think that youth are rising. Make a Change is rising. Yeah. And hopefully, people listen to us, because there's no turning back.
So, and this is the hard part, right? They talk about the boiled frog scenario, where if you chuck a frog in water and you boil it slowly, it will die, right? Think about that in relation to the environment and everything that's happening. But if you throw it into hot water, it'll jump out. E.g., because it's so hot, it feels it and jumps. And because the environment, we all know it's changing, and there are skeptics, and we'll talk about that shortly, but because it's not imminent, like right now, how do we engage those people to be exactly like you, to be able to now take some action? Because you're already doing it, but I'm really trying to get, how do we engage the people to A, be educated, and B, take action to do something about it in their own backyard?
I think, we all have that possibility of making a change, and that's really what we wanted to start with Make a Change World, is really how can we inspire people to make that leap forward, to really make that small, simple change. And we don't have to change our entire life, goes fully zero waste, not produce any plastics. No, we understand that behavioral change happens quite slowly, and it's all about, this week I'm gonna start drinking more water, for example, or this week I'm gonna stop using a plastic toothbrush, I'm gonna change it with a bamboo toothbrush. So the small little switches for your health, for just society overall, are what we have to start focusing on. And so with Make a Change, we're very, very excited to be releasing later this year a full-on sustainable guide that will be customized by location. So whether you're in Paris, you have everything you need to know about how to make that change, or in Sydney, you can understand everything that you need to know about making a change. So that'll be a list of things you could do on a daily basis to help the process. Make a Change, essentially, over the last 4 or 5 years, we made the switch of becoming a media outlet to inspire people through videos as well, of amazing stories out in the world. Through our travels, we really realized that there's way more people out there, young and old. There's no age boundaries, there's no gender boundaries, of people really knowing that this planet, we have one planet left and we have to protect it. So we're excited about that. Great resource. So Mike, back to what we were talking about earlier, is the skeptics. Yeah. Now, my philosophy on all of this is they talk about the research as being conflicted, right? But my belief is that research is only going to tell you what the person funding the research wants you to say anyway, so it's tarnished. Yeah. And whatever our external reality is a reflection of our internal, so we will observe the results we want to observe based on what we want to observe, right? The skeptics that are out there, my thoughts are, would you not rather do something about it, even if it's not true, climate change, that is, right, and in the process make a more efficient, more sustainable world, than go, it's a load of shit, I'm not doing anything about it? What do you think? I think, right now, one of the biggest things that we don't have is data. We're speaking, temperatures is rising, ocean are rising, but when it comes back to plastic pollution, which is really our area of focus, we're lacking data of plastics into our ocean. We don't know what types of plastics are pouring down. We don't know what brands to hold accountable. And if we visually have that data, if we can visualize it, I think we'd be able to, so that's what we're trying to as well create with Swing I Watch, being a monitoring platform, starting with these trash blocks and trash barriers. But once we have removed the trash from these waterways, we then bring it to a research station, which we then separate into the various types of plastics, and then actually pinpoint what types of brands are within these types of plastics. So we can hold the brands accountable. At Davos recently, Coca-Cola announced that they were going to continue producing as much plastic bottles because consumer demanded. But that's not true. Not true. On social media, you're seeing single use being named the Word of the Year in 2018. Massive movements happening all around the world. In Australia, you have Take 3 for the oceans. There's a movement in Costa Rica called 5 Minute Beach Cleanup. So these social movements are building fast, and people are really demanding change. So how can you make sure that the brands are following true data, true information, big corporates? So I think if we can visualize, as we did on the Cheetah Room, but bring in data as part of it, then hopefully, it can be a global collaboration effort. We can't point fingers anymore. I think, we've gone past that phase. It needs to be mass collaboration from a retailer's point of view, to the big Walmarts, Carrefours, Walgreens, all those guys, as well as the big corporates producing the plastic and using it in their packaging, to the grassroots movements and governmental efforts. And I think if we can I think that the conversation is starting to happen. It's definitely not going fast enough. We're not doing enough, but I think with that data, with those visuals, we'll be able to make some change happen.
Yeah, and I know we did some sorting yesterday. We did some weighing. We looked at the different types of plastic, etc. But also, there's a massive education gap still, isn't there? There's not as much awareness as there could be, especially in Indonesia as an example. But B, then there's an education. We talked about it yesterday that in Indonesia, they think that plastic reduction is going to change climate change, whereas it's just one of the things, isn't it?
Right. Yeah, so when you're at a rally for climate change on Fridays, from Fridays for Future, for example, the big global movement that has happened where kids are skipping school to protest on the streets, the young Indonesian students, when you do go to those rallies, they have banners of saying reduce plastic bottles, and nothing about our rainforest or the mining industry or anything else. So I think the level of awareness here still needs to increase a lot more in developing countries overall, I think. But for them to make that first leap of knowledge and thinking that plastic is bad because it's so visual, back to our conversation earlier, we do understand the urgency that we have with regards to plastic pollution because it's taking over our beaches. Literally, we're sitting on a pile that has been burnt.
We're sitting in a rubbish dump here, right next to the beach.
And so, because it's so visual, people do realize it. When you speak about ocean level rise, yes, Indonesia, biggest island country in the world, 17,000 islands. We're going to rapidly see it, but not right now. And I think people need to face true emergency or they need to physically and visually be faced with the threat in order to act.
That's what I'm saying, right? The boiled frog, they need the hot water to jump out, but they don't have that yet, do they?
And unfortunately, yes, people need, and I don't know how to provoke the masses, but we have to...
Until it affects them personally, I think that's a hard one, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah. Whereas you're seeing it, look at around us, there's rubbish everywhere, and it's a beautiful beach, and people are sunbaking down there on the beach with rubbish all around them.
Exactly.
Which is just doesn't happen in Australia so much,
Right.
or other countries.
Yeah.
So, what is the solution overall? What do you think the solution is?
I think it starts with that behavioral change from every one of us. If kids here in Indonesia had way more of a knowledge and would tell their parents not to throw plastics in the rivers, we'd be in a different state. If government took that change forward, so I think it's really a behavioral mindset that needs to be completely changed. We've done it as a human race. Back 50, 60, 70 years ago, plastics was not out everywhere as it is now. So we have to think about this one planet that we have, this one ocean that we have, and make sure that we're protecting it for generations to come.
So what help do you need to make this happen? As someone like yourself or other organisations that are doing their best on a day-to-day basis, tell the viewers, what do you need?
I think, we need to be way stronger of a movement. We need people all around the world to step up to be key role models in this fight. Show that it's possible to reduce our overall plastic pollution or plastic consumption habits. But and we need support. We need people willing to go in the rivers. We need people willing to replicate our solutions here on Bali massively around the world.
Do you need financial support?
We need obviously financial support. Yeah.
Because I saw yesterday, right? So the booms themselves and the blocks cost money.
Right.
Right. The installation of that costs money. They're not light, so it takes people. The monitoring of the booms and the blocks need money. Then the daily cleaning of the blocks and booms needs money.
Yeah,
because of people, resources.
It's a full operation scheme that requires some donation. or money to run the entire operation, but hopefully as we are able to replicate it, we can really depend on local governance and national government in order to replicate it within the government.
So you've got a system then called the blocks and the booms and a system that goes with it that ultimately could be scalable, leverageable by franchising to each community where they could have their own local sponsors, etc.
Exactly, yeah. So on Bali, the goal for the end of the year is to install 100 solutions in our rivers to protect as much of coastlines as possible. And so in mid-May, we'll be doing that with a full run around the coast. So you'll see us running right here and literally circumnavigating the island by foot. But
in plastic shoes?
Potentially. But in order to go, river and measure every output out to sea. And if we can measure every output out to sea and literally put a physical barrier there, or measure the most polluting rivers around the island, then we can concentrate on...
Talk to the local communities, the government and stuff.
And show them what we've done in our pilot village. So our pilot village consists of 10 solutions of trash booms and trash blocks, and a full cleaning and sorting team. So that will be put in place. We're really in the piloting right now, as you saw yesterday, but it'll be put in place from mid-March to mid-May to really allow us 2 months of full workflow, figuring out the best way of organizing, and then hopefully by mid-May we can scale up massively across Bali first and then to the rest of the country.
So there's definitely a way of local communities getting involved with Make a Change, with your system, to be able to make a change for their environment.
Right. No, definitely. I think, really sort of in our rivers, because it's our essential pathways from land to the ocean. It connects, our world here on an everyday basis living on land to the ocean. And I think if we are to protect that very pathway, and water essentially as well, as the most precious resource in our life, we're able to sustain as a planet.
Yeah, it's interesting. We talked about this yesterday. I'm from New Zealand. We got the cleanest rivers in the world, and from as long as I've been alive, which is a couple of years, 25 years, it's just been in our education that you do not litter, you don't throw stuff in the water. It's just, I said to you yesterday, you're an asshole if you do, right? But here, they don't have that education, do they?
No, fortunately not. And so, that's where that behavioral change needs to start happening. If we can make sure that our rivers are the most protected, precious resource on the island of Bali, then we can radically change what happens in the ocean. And we'll get way more less plastic pollution ending up in our beaches as well.
And you've garnered enough support already from an engineering company to be able to support you with your blocks and the booms?
Yes, so I guess right now we're exploring with various engineers to see which solutions are the best. But really trying to explore, there's so many other technologies out there in the world. There's these bubbles, barriers in Amsterdam in the canals that are literally bubbling up the waterways and are looking like a physical wall. So it's just a trash bubble barrier.
Wow.
So that could be also interesting, and there's other technologies that are more automated than the ones that we have. So, we're trying to learn as much as possible and see what the best optimal solutions are. We're in infancy stages right now, but learning every day from the job, definitely.
Well, I guess there's other companies are out there. They're interested in being socially responsible, aren't they? They want to make a difference. They might have a budget and sure, it might be tax deductible, but at least it's something that could support.
We've seen over the last 2-3 years that, CSR is not anymore...
CSR, what is that?
So CSR, corporate social responsibility, was essentially like a sub-department of every company. But right now, it's really merged into the entire philosophy of the companies and visions of really being here for the planet, for the long-term planet. So you have businesses like IKEA, that, I've told, that they're going to make all their furniture out of recycled materials and can be recycled. Other companies, like Patagonia, dedicating 1% of the budget every year to our planet, and people fighting for the protection of our planet, and also creating entire platforms to allow businesses to jump on the same board. So we're moving in this other way of making business for good for the planet, and I think that's what it should all be about.
So, Gary, for the outliers that are out there, the young entrepreneurs or the young people who are socially responsible and want to make a difference, what advice have you got for them to be able to start their journey?
I think, it's truly that no idea is crazy enough. to protect the planet or just to do what you want. And that's really been our philosophy behind some of our expeditions or some of our projects, is that when you're committed to one crazy idea, you have to go above and beyond to make that achievable. Surround yourselves with the best possible team, the best possible support system, mentors, your parents that are supporting you, your friends and family as well, and try to see how you can make that idea into reality. So create, an action plan to make sure that what you're putting out is doable, and then with that support system, try to use some of them to support you in making sure that idea becomes a reality. So, from running across the US, my brother, he had never run a marathon prior to running 117 marathons back to back.
Just say that again.
So my brother recently ran across America, the US, the American continent, from New York to LA. 3,000 miles, which is about 5,000 kilometers.
117 marathons.
117 marathons.
Never run one in his life.
Yeah. 117 marathons back to back. Never had run one marathon in his life. But just with that pure intention of really wanting to jump into the Pacific Ocean and doing an expedition ocean to ocean with his foot. And so if you have an idea like that, that's really in your, nobody, human existence and human capability is all in the mind. So whether, you want to do 100 trash barriers around Bali, again, it's that dedication. How can you move forward with an action plan, with milestones, that make sure that it's tangible, that it's real, and that it can actually happen.
So again, I'll go back to the viewers. You've had this calling, this passion, this desire to do something for the planet. They might not have that same clarity as you when you first started. Again, we talk about support, we talk about action plans, we talk about everything, and not everyone gets it at the same age as you did either, right? There's people out there want to do something. What would you recommend? Can they jump on with someone else initially and learn from them, and then that might evolve into their own thing, or? Yeah,
I think, number one way of getting educated or seeing is through watching documentaries. Watch, some of the things that you've been interested in, whether it's, meat consumption and wanting to reduce that, or a crazy river expedition. You can watch the film Plastic River. Or you can actually, now there's more and more, these platforms for young entrepreneurs and young change makers to actually show them every step of the way. And so there's one called Youthopia, actually founded Youthopia, which is the center of youth around the world, founded by my girlfriend.
Oh wow!
I'm one of their advisors, but really, the idea is to how can you propel society forward by teaching our youth how to become change makers.
So yesterday we spent some time, we were bringing the rubbish out, we're cleaning it, we're sorting it, we're weighing it. I did that for half the day with you, and half of that time was filming. You do that every day. Mate, that is thankless work, as I mentioned earlier. How do you stay motivated when you're challenged by that, knowing that tonight it's going to rain again and there's more plastic coming down that river?
I think right now we're trying to sort out the best possible workflow for this entire system, how we can scale. So I'm physically the one doing it right now because it's...
So you're learning.
So I'm learning, and when we do employ people or get a crew of people that want to help us, I think, it's about making it as easy as possible to sort, to clean, to process. And at the moment, it's not easy to sort, clean, and process. So if we're able to facilitate the entire scheme, then I think we can even leverage that in order to scale it up into the waste management sector and whatnot. But I think, on a rainy night, 2 nights ago, I really envisioned that on the Cheetah River there was one moment where there was very, very heavy rains and literally trash came gushing down these small alleyways into the bigger river. And then as we came back to the spot that we had started the night before, or the afternoon before, we get stranded into this plastic berg, and literally, we're rowing in this plastic, and I think...
You just can't get out of it.
No, every stroke, you get plastic bags entangled in your paddle, and I think when you see that and experience that, and you're literally physically stranded in plastic, then, what about turtles that get to live in that? What about our dolphins? What about, when you think about the ocean, again, 2050 more plastics than fish.
So you're overcoming, and the reason I'm asking the question is, how do you overcome challenges that can help the viewers? Your way of overcoming it is to be inspired or motivated by the shit that you're engulfed in on a day-to-day basis, knowing I'm going to do something about this. So you're not giving up. It's not an option. If
every politician or governmental figure were to experience the condition of the Cheetah River as we did in the summer of 2017, I think we'd be way more forward as a society, leading the path to sustainability. But now, you know...
Do you think that's a possibility? We could do tours down the Cheetah River to make people realise what we need to do? That'd be pretty amazing, wouldn't it?
That's that.
Do you think they'd pay to do that? I don't think so.
No, it'd be like a life-changing experience pretty much, But I think if we get them in that state where they're shredding the plastics and literally floating on a plastic bottle kayak where the water is rising in their kayaks, wearing the boots, those orange boots that we did yesterday, and it's slowly creeping in and they're sinking at the same time.
And then, it stinks and there's death around them. And
it's like that frog.
So the frog again, but I know a lot of people give up, right? But I also know, like, I want to inspire outliers out there to be themselves and make a difference.
Right.
So when they're feeling those challenges, and I've seen them yesterday, man, with what you're experiencing, how do you not give up? So you're just super motivated by the upside of all this and cleaning up the earth. What advice would you have to them in their scenario?
I think, you know, when you have a crazy idea bubbling in your head, you want that crazy idea to and the truth is sometimes we lose ourselves and because we don't think it's possible, or sometimes, you know, we have bad days and it just feels overwhelming. But if you keep that end goal in mind and do everything towards making sure that end goal is really what you
so stay focused on the dream.
Maybe one day it's smaller steps, you know, maybe the other day it's bigger steps, but the end goal, and really staying determined in order to make it happen.
And be patient.
Be patient.
Because it doesn't happen overnight, does it?
No,
I mean, you're living proof, right?
For sure not.
So how long have you been going?
So for 10 years. We celebrated our 10 years in October, earlier last year.
So do you think in that 10 years you've come as far as you thought you would have 10 years ago?
Yeah, I would have known that I would have taken this very particular issue straight to heart. But now it feels like it's, you know, the number one concentration, focus.
Yeah. So of the last 10 years and everything that you've learned, what's the one thing that you feel you could share to the viewers that's going to help them on their journey as an entrepreneur, as a socially responsible or a socialpreneur, or just in life in general, be themselves and be successful being themselves? What would that be?
I think if you think about your relation to the planet and what you want to leave behind, you know, again, we only have one planet left, and what do you want to contribute as one individual to make this planet sustainable for generations to come? And I think if you put that mindset to it, you start thinking yourselves in the bigger picture of the world, you start watching those documentaries, you start listening about what's the global problem that are happening. Maybe you go out in the field and you experience and you're, you know, physically in threat by some of those conditions, then your call will naturally appear, your purpose. And I think that's what people have to start feeling, sensing their purpose.
How did you feel that? Did you tune in with meditation, or it just happened? It was viewing it externally by seeing the beaches? What was it for you that started to rise?
Just really seeing our home island, you know, being trashed in plastic.
Yeah.
You're running, you're surfing, it's there.
And you just felt compelled, a feeling of compulsion to do something about it.
Completely, yeah.
So for the viewers, if they feel compelled to do something, and it doesn't have to be environmentally, it could be socially, business-wise, whatever, take action on it.
Exactly, yeah.
And you never know where it will end up, will you?
Completely.
Well, Gary, you're certainly making a huge difference to the world, making a change to the world. You're an outlier in every sense of the word. I'm totally been inspired being here with you and learning more about your story. Thanks for coming on the show, mate.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Well, guys, there it is. I hope you enjoyed this inspiring Outlier episode with Gary Bencheghib. For more videos, resources and information, go to outlier.tv or click the link to our social media pages below. I'm Andrew McComb, and here's to living the outlier life outside of the comfort zone. I'll see you soon.